Parag Khanna, we're at HVA in Amsterdam at a conference about reinventing the university. You were the keynote speaker and you made a very, very powerful speech about 21st century universities. What did you say?
The 21st century university has to see itself as an agent of diplomacy. They have to see themselves as actually having a role in solving global problems. It's not something that you push off to the governments or that you simply train people to then go and work for governments to do. You're actually a part of the solution already. And that reminds me actually of the world of 1,000 years ago, like the Middle Ages. Universities were actually pillars of society and stability. People went to universities not only just to learn, but they were actually places where a social order was built. And that's becoming the same thing again. Now, universities are pioneering research in poverty alleviation, pioneering research in how to tackle climate change. All kinds of major global issues are being dealt with and tackled in our universities today. So to me, they are diplomatic actors. They're every bit as important as many governments are.
What do you think the rest of the world can learn from Dutch universities, if anything at all?
Well, the Dutch system actually is quite segmented or stratified. Not everyone goes to university to become a generalist. They have a strong vocational training program. They've always focused for centuries on the certain key sectors of the economy, whether it's shipping or finance or other areas where they can always play a very strong role. And so they continue to do that because they've always been training people specifically for those careers. There's nothing wrong with that. Clearly, that's what's helped Holland remain one of the most competitive economies in the world today, because they know what their niche is, what their specialty is. And I think that is a lesson for many countries around the world. I think we often give the wrong advice to emerging markets. We say you have to diversify your economies, you have to move into the knowledge sector. Every country in the world, even poor oil producers, all of a sudden have to have their own Silicon Valley. I think that's nonsense. I actually think that you have to be good at one thing before you start trying to get good at 50 things. So it would actually be nice to see us helping and training countries and societies take advantage of what they have, whether it's something that God gave them or whether it's their population size, whether it's oil or whether it's human capital, and to actually utilize that to the maximum and diminish corruption and to use those resources and profits to improve society. And then you can start talking about every country building a Silicon Valley.
Would it be fair to say that there are sort of paragons of development, countries like Singapore and Hong Kong, which are perhaps in some ways operating off the Amsterdam or Dutch principle?
Well, what we really look at, what we really learn from cases like Singapore and elsewhere is that those are cities, and the city is the unit of action. It's the right size community where you can really see change happen. It's where most of the world's economy is based in cities. Most of the world's innovation takes place in cities. So there's something excellent about that, because then you can turn development and growth into something more of a science rather than just a sort of an art where you're just kind of navigating blind. But it also means, though, that there's a limited utility to the example, because not every place in the world is a city. But I do think that there is something in the Dutch model. For example, look at the ports. Rotterdam Port itself. Rotterdam Port is not the government of Holland, but Rotterdam Port is called upon by countries all over the world to help teach port development, because that is the skill, that is the niche that many coastal countries need, that haven't developed their coastlines, that don't have the ability to import and export and to build a good infrastructure. Rotterdam becomes the role model for that. So I think in quite a few of these issues, Holland has actually proven to be a good role model.
Holland has always also been a paragon of openness, of liberalism, of creativity over the last 500 years, really since the Middle Ages. I think the Dutch were the first culture really to challenge many of the principles of the Middle Ages. As we move into this post-industrial knowledge economy, how does Holland maintain its openness? How does it maintain its leadership of, if not creativity, certainly tolerance in the digital age? And how can the university help in that way?
Well, the Dutch were, in fact, one of the last millennium's most successful empires, especially given what a small territory they were coming from. And that openness is absolutely, as you said, a key part of it, because it was a naval power. And it still is, to some extent, a naval power, or that is to say, using the seas to extend its influence. And so it is educating global managers. You find Dutch managers all over the world playing key roles in Western companies, multinationals. You find them in pivotal roles consulting foreign governments, and so you find them also bringing them back here through Schiphol Airport into Holland to learn from public officials. You find Dutch programs in environmental management and recycling and other things as far as China, because these are skill sets and expertise that Dutch society has built up to manage its environment, to manage its society, to manage its diversity. It is now exporting those things around the world. And so being open not only to foreigners coming in, but in training them and training the Dutch population and sending them back out again, these are things that Holland has done and continues to do extremely well.